Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming and coming back or coming for the first time. We had a great program this morning, and we're going to have a very good program this afternoon. And we're really excited to do this. It's our fourth time doing this, and we're very delighted that Microsoft is our partner on this. So this afternoon, we're going to have our own Anna Plummer is going to be doing Governor Sam Brownback and from Kansas, and he's first. And then after that, Alex Burns is going to be doing Governor Jay Nixon. So before I tell you about all the social media, I'm going to turn it over to Microsoft's Ann Gavin to say a few words. They're Director of State Government Affairs.
Hello, everyone. How many are back from this morning? Okay, so you might hear the same speech from me again, sorry. I'm Ann Gavin. I'm with the U.S. Government Affairs team here at Microsoft, and on behalf of my two bosses, Fred Humphreys and Ed Engel, who unfortunately couldn't be with us today, I wanted to thank you for attending this 4th annual State Solutions Conference with our terrific partner, POLITICO. We're always really excited to have this event here at our Microsoft offices. So I want to tell you a little bit about Microsoft, maybe something that you don't know. I mean, we're obviously a global company. We have over 100,000 employees across the globe. But we're also a local company, and if after the event you want to wander downstairs and maybe head on over to our Xbox lounge, I'm told that we will have the hockey game playing downstairs later. But you'll pass a few conference rooms with names like New York, Atlanta, Charlotte, Fargo. These are all our offices around the country where we have an employee base. So Microsoft is really has a significant presence across the country, which is one of the reasons why we're so excited to have some of our state leaders here today, some of our state CEOs, our nation's governors, who are working really hard on issues like STEM education and building a high-skilled workforce, jobs in the economy, privacy, an issue I think it's been in the news quite a bit lately, and cloud computing. And these are all issues that we care a lot about at Microsoft, but I'm guessing most of you care about those as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Lois and have her kick everything off with our speakers today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann, and thank you so much for your support of this great program. All of you should have on your chairs, if you were here this morning, you know about it, and if not, there are these cards, and it has the hashtag on it. It's hashtag PolGovs. That's how you can ask your questions. So if you tweet to that, Anna's going to have a device on her lap, and she can kind of look at it. And so please, do so. You never know. She might run out of questions. Probably not. But we'd love to hear from you all. So with that, I would like to bring on Anna and Governor Brownback.
Thank you. Hi, guys.
All right. Thanks so much. Governor Brownback, thank you for joining us.
Sure,
and,
happy to join you here.
We'll get started, and if you have any questions that you want me to ask him, tweet into it, and we'll take your questions. So I think first, one of the things that you've gotten a lot of credit for is changing the financial situation of your state. Talk to me a little bit about kind of why that was so important and how, as a red state governor, you've been able to do that and how that might translate into something that could happen nationwide.
Well, it's important because when I started off, we had $876.05 in the bank account.
I saw that.
Literally, that was the number. And I kind of laughed when I first heard it. I said, oh, yeah, sure. What's the actual number? No. It's $876.05 is what the last fiscal year ended in the state bank account. But it's actually worse than that. We're projecting a $500 million deficit if we continue on the trend line that we're on right now. And oh, by the way, our pension system is the second least funded in America. And Illinois is the worst funded system in America.
And you wanted this job.
Yeah, and that's what they said. You signed up for it. You campaigned for it. So you just really you had to change the financial trajectory of where we were headed to. So that's when we really leaned in and said, okay, we've got to do a lot of things here, state government. We're down 3,000 employees at state government, at the executive branch. We had to get growth taking place, so we really went for a pro-growth tax change, went to zero taxes on all small business income, LLC and sub-S.
What did that impact? I mean, how big of an impact was that in terms of the LLCs? Did you see a big spike in growth on that?
We got, yesterday we got the numbers for 2013, and we had a record number of new LLCs, sub-S's in the state of Kansas, 15,500. Prior to tax change, the record number we'd ever had was in the 13,000s. So we bumped that 2,000 for new business formations. That was last year alone. The prior year we had just over 15,000 with the new tax policy. So we're seeing small businesses come into the state of Kansas, and the beauty of it is that's what you really want. 3/4 of Kansans work for themselves or for somebody with 10 or fewer employees. And big business, you buy them. You have to pay for big business to come into your state.
Give them a tax credit or something like that.
It's not just tax credits. It's a series of things, and everybody's kind of used to the system, and we play it too, and we play aggressive. But small business, they just want a better environment, and it's where most people work. And so we went to zero on the LLC sub-S pass-through income, best business environment in America, better than any place. Better than Texas.
This is your advertisement right here.
Absolutely.
Come to Kansas.
Come to Kansas. And that's really, the modeling on that really looks good too, because the key piece you're after here is job creation. You need jobs.
So talk to me a little bit about this, because there was a public policy poll out today that said there's a little bit of backlash. I think only 33% of the voters approve of the job that you are doing. I think that was what that's pretty stark. Do you think that's because of the the situation, or just everybody hates government?
There was a poll out 2 weeks ago that had me up 11 points. You know, it's early. They're probably reacting to something that's maybe in the news. But also, most of these changes you put in place and you don't see the effect for a year or two. So people are saying, okay, we had this big tax debate. Where's what I'm looking for? Well, okay, we just had yesterday's news.
Right.
Record number of, we've had great job formation. We're down at 4.9% unemployment, 10th lowest in America. You know, so you've got to be out and putting that forward, because the media only covers the battle. They never cover the success. And we've got to be out and telling people about it.
We like the fights. That's true.
You got it. You know, that's
true knock on us.
Well, I mean, but that's the nature of the beast. That's what media covers.
How different is it? I mean, you were here in Washington. You were in the Senate. How different is it being one of 100 versus you kind of, the buck stops with you now?
It's different, and it's a different time. That's the thing I think that's going on, particularly as a red state and a red state governor. There is a big policy field agenda going on amongst a number of the red states. And that's why it was different than here. The policy field agenda, normally policy moves very incrementally, if it moves at all, as we're seeing here in Washington. What you're seeing is a number of red states saying, look, we've got to change the trajectory here. We didn't create, Kansas had a net loss of private sector jobs last decade. Well, you can't keep doing that. Your public sector can't be more robust than your private sector. You got to have that growth taking place.
But talking about what's happening, the conversation in the states, there was a New York Times article recently that really delved into Kansas and kind of the conservative side, and there seems like a fight within the GOP that's happening, and you're seeing that with your own senator right now. I mean, do you see that every day? Is that something that you think is just a battleground in Kansas right now? I
wouldn't put it that way. I'd say it's more of a lively discussion. And it's because we tried the blue state model. We were the second highest tax state in the region. We were growing a lot more public sector jobs than private sector jobs. We've tried the blue state model, and that took us from the 28th most populous state in America to the 33rd most populous state in America during Bob Dole's political career, basically. He started in the 6th congressional district in Kansas. We now have 4. And we'll be headed to 3 if we don't change our trajectory.
Are you going to endorse in the Senate race, or have you decided?
I've already endorsed, Pat Roberts.
Pat Roberts. I mean, do you think he's going to win? I mean, he's obviously having some challenges.
I do. Pat's a good man and has done a lot of good work. Votes and is actively a conservative. I think Pat's going to move forward solidly, and he's a good guy. He's really done a lot for the state over a real career of service.
So talking about what's happening here in Washington, immigration reform is something that we focus on a lot, and it seemed like there was the movement, and now it seems like it's kind of less likely to get done. You, in 2002, were really supportive of immigration reform. Where do you see this now? Is this important? Do you want it to go forward?
I think it's a very important topic. The country is built on immigrants. We're all immigrants from somewhere other than the Native Americans, so we've all come in here. It's a very touchy issue, and the divide becomes on what you do on people that came here illegally or stayed too long and are now in an illegal status, because everybody supports legal immigration. Sure, and we take a large number of legal immigrants on a yearly basis, I think more than any other country in the world, but you got to wrestle with the situation that's at hand. I mean,
if you had to have a prediction, if you, knowing Washington like you do, knowing the states and the kind of support that you see out there in the states, do you think it happens before the election?
I think it happens. The immigration debate's a very tough debate. Whether it happens before the election or not, I couldn't really handicap that very well. But I think at some point in time it does happen, because it's just such a part of what America is. And to try to get this system sorted out, I think the passion level is a critical issue as people kind of measure what the passion piece of it is. But it's a critical part of the United States.
So speaking of politics, when you get into it, we're already looking at 2016, and we're already covering it. I feel like I'm barely recovered from the last election, but
that's really one of the bad things about us. Is you're always looking forward on it. I remember when I left the Senate here, I left, and for the 2 years that I was in, that I had announced I wasn't running for re-election, it was like, oh, you're not in the Senate anymore. Because we're already looking past, somebody's going to be in this seat. Yeah, I know, but I'm in the Senate now.
I'm here now.
Talk to me. But it's just everybody's always kind of looking beyond all that.
So you were in 2008. You put your hat in the ring. Why do you think maybe a governor, or do you have any interest in doing it again? And then, what might be a governor bring to this race? There's a lot of talk about governors right now.
Well, I think governors bring a lot to the race, because you got a real practical set of experiences here on dealing with real problems, on real budgets, and how do you make things work? Because that's really what people are asking for you to do at the state level. Let's make this place work. We've been declining population percentage in the United States. Turn that around. Well, how are you going to do that? Well, and then you get in this real policy debate, and I think that's why governors often are ones that are looked at for presidential contenders, because you got a series of those experiments that are going on, and experience in the right term. It's really, you're putting in place things to move things in the right direction.
So you can have a record to run on versus a bunch of votes. So do you have any interest in 2016?
I'm fully occupied. Because these are very serious issues that wrestling with right now in the state of Kansas.
Anybody that you like of the people that are talked about?
There are a number of them that I think are very good. And I know most of the folks that are looking at it. What I see taking place that I think is probably the bigger story in my estimation is you've got a red state, blue state model going on across the country in various states. And you got states going fast both ways. So you got blue states aggressively going, okay, we're raising taxes, we're going to provide more services here, we're going to do this, and you got red states going, we're going to cut taxes, we're going to grow the economy, we're going to get our fiscal house in order, and you're seeing these both happen at the same time. And I think that's really the more interesting piece of it, because one of these models probably wins out. And you say, okay, then the country will move this way or move that way based upon, do you think California is doing better or Texas? Look at them. You got two different policy models. What do you think?
So one of the other issues that's really come up is, and I think is something that's going to play out a lot, is kind of, and I want to ask you about because you're a social conservative, is kind of the so-called war on women that Republicans have had a hard time. Last cycle there was the Todd Akin moment. There was these kind of conservatives that weren't able to speak, about it in the correct way. How do Republicans get that back?
I think we have to really talk about, George W. Bush would talk some about it, compassionate conservatism. I'd talk about being a bleeding heart conservative. I think we need to pick topics. I think we need to deal with poverty in the United States and mental health issues. And a lot of these topics have some interrelationship, but I think we need to really go at, one of my models in the policy system is William Wilberforce, that led the end of the slave trade in Great Britain in the 1800s, late 1700s, early 1800s. And it was this sort of kind of bleeding heart conservative, heartfelt, dealing with a real problem. We have a real problem with poverty in the United States. We've had the Great Society for now 50 years, and our poverty rates are the same. You know, and you're looking at a system that has not gotten people out of poverty. And the answer can't be just, okay, cut food stamps. That's not the answer. It's got to be a different model, but it has to lift and help people get lifted out of poverty. You have to actually deal with people's mental health issues. 2/3 of our prison population in Kansas has mental health, substance abuse, or both problems.
When we were talking
you got to
before,
deal with these.
we were talking before about the prison reform that you've done. I don't know if you want to speak a little bit about that, because that was really interesting to me in terms of what you're trying to do there on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, I did it here federally, Second Chance Act, and its target is reducing recidivism rates. What we're doing in the state of Kansas, we're trying to get a mentor for every prisoner that comes out of the prison system in Kansas. We regularly get about 6,000 out on an annual basis. We're about halfway there. We've got a mentor for everybody that comes out of the prison system, because a lot of times people, they need new relationships, and they need somebody to stick with them. And sometimes they've blown through all their prior relationships. But this is the sort of thing that I'm talking about that I think is the route back for the Republican Party and for conservatism in particular, is that bleeding heart conservatism. How do you really help people that may not vote for you, may not even consider voting for you, but they have sincere problems and the current system is not serving them?
What about in terms of abortion? That's something that you made some news on earlier this year, I think, calling some of the protesters of the anti-abortion movement, liking them to, you know, the abolitionists. Abolitionism. Is that something that...
Well, I didn't do that.
I read it. I don't know.
Yeah,
I was not there.
No, I didn't do that. I am pro-life, and I believe strongly that life is sacred at all stages and all places. That's part of the prison reform agenda, actually. Is that life, that person in prison is sacred. They are. Now, they have done some horrible things. The life remains sacred. And you need to work with this person.
Do you think Republicans should be bringing that up more at the federal level?
I do. And I just, and because the current system isn't working. But our answer can't be, well, you just cut the current system. The answer has to be, here is a different way. We want to mentor folks, and we've got a target for it. We want to reduce recidivism rates by 5% a year for the next 5 years. So you put a number on it. I ran on numbers this last time around. I said, I want to change 5 numbers in the state of Kansas. I want to get personal income up. I want to get 4th grade reading levels better, reduce poverty. I want to get high school technical career scores up and moving forward. And I'm going to grow the overall net income for the state. You know, that you run on a series of numbers that are measurable, so that people, when they look at it, and you also then target your administration. I think Republicans can do that and say, okay, we want to reduce the poverty rate this much. And this is what we're going to run on.
In terms of that, there's been a conversation. The RNC did, you know, their look at what happened in the last election, and there was a big discussion about potentially broadening the tent to gay marriage, to some other, you know, maybe not taking on immigration reform and trying to be more open. Where do you stand on that? Do you think that that's a discussion that needs to be happening?
I think the discussion needs to be happening, but I think the topics really are what you do on poverty, because we have such a need here. What we do on mental health, which is a major, major need in the country. That's the key areas that I think, because it just cries at you in the country that we've spent, what, $20 trillion in the war on poverty, and the levels are the same? And people, when they put the war on poverty in the first place forward, their hearts were good. People wanted the right things to happen, but it hasn't worked. And that's why I really think those are issues that just really cry out for solutions.
Let's talk about one of the other big issues that's going to be in this next campaign is going to be Obamacare. And it's certainly something that we're seeing a ton of in terms of ads and what people are running on. You decided not to take the federal money to set up an exchange. Walk us through that decision and what the aftermath has been.
Well, Obamacare is not working. The numbers aren't working. on it. And what we looked at the state of Kansas is I was talking with them about taking the money to establish the exchange, but I said, but I want to set up a Kansas model for this exchange. And we started down that road, and they said, well, okay, we'll talk about that. And then the further we got, they said, no, it's got to be the Obamacare model. And I said, well, if it's got to be your model, I'm not interested in taking it. I said, the system is not set up to where it's going to work. You've got to get a number of young healthies into this system to pay for the people coming into the system that are going to have high usage. And you're going to have a real trouble trying to drive that model. You should have taken a much narrower fix on this and done healthcare reform like we had been doing the prior 30 years, which was a bipartisan effort, and you go at it incrementally to try to go at your specific target areas. That's how you've had healthcare reform moving forward successfully in the United States. They said, no, we want a hard left model. We want to take over this piece of the marketplace. And I just said, I really sincerely do not believe that this is going to work, and it hasn't been working.
So what has been happening in Kansas? Talk about, I mean, with healthcare. I mean, by not taking that, what has happened?
We haven't had a high sign up for Obamacare. We have been able to fix our Medicaid system in the state of Kansas. We went to a CanCare model, integrated care for mental, physical health issues across the board. We've been able to add services to that and reduce the waiting list that we had in that model. We've had some really nice successes. People getting heart transplants that we couldn't pay for before on Medicaid, preventive dental that we didn't pay for in Medicaid before. So what we've done is really tried to fix the piece that we had and have had some beautiful success. We have people alive today because we went to a different Medicaid model and system.
Do you think that that is going to be the Achilles heel for Democrats in 2014?
It has been previous cycles, and I think there's a reason why the administration keeps rolling under questionable authority, saying, well, we're not going to put...
Passing the deadlines, putting them off.
Passing the deadline, put it next year, and you're going to go on, well, it's in the law. How do you do that? Well, I'm just doing it. And you're going, that seems to be questionable authority to do it, but obviously they're looking at it and saying, we don't want any other problems with this system prior to the midterm elections, but the problem is there are problems with the system. And it's not just the healthcare.gov sign up.
Speaking to that, I mean, executive power is something that we've been reporting on a lot, right? After Obama's State of the Union speech where he said, I'm going to do a lot more. Do you think he's abusing that power?
Well, I wonder where the authority comes from on some of it. And that's what I would look at and say, where is the authority to waive the deadline on these? These were statutes. You can go back to Congress and you can get authority, but where's the authority to do this? And I think there's a significant question about that.
Talk a little bit about, one of the things we report on a lot is Americans for Prosperity and some of these third-party groups that are coming in and doing a lot of the ad buys. Do you think that they're having an impact? Is that something that you're supportive of, or do you feel like, you know, big money is kind of getting into the campaigns and kind of taking over?
You know, I mean, people buy advertising. You know, Microsoft buys advertising, and there's a reason that they do it, because it does have impact. But I think overall people they're pretty good at knowing what they believe in. And one guy told me one time, you know, a lot of people, it's like listening to music. They don't know exactly what's in the words, but they get the tune. And I think there are a fair number of people like that, even at watching in politics. They're going, I want to participate. I want my country going the right direction. I'm not paying attention to everything, but I get the tune. And I think that's really what governs more in election cycles. Do you want to go with more government involvement and intrusion or less? And you just saw a recent Gallup poll said that people's bigger fear of anything now, if you compare big business, big government, big labor, it's big government. On a scale never before we've been as high as it is now.
So you're coming to Washington for the Governors Association meeting.
Yeah.
You talked about kind of the red state versus blue state model. Do you think there's going to be much that's able to get accomplished? Are there other governors that you are working with that you can try to find some compromise, or states that can work together?
You know, you may find this odd, but I think there's a lot being accomplished at the state levels. It's just you're seeing a couple of different models. And this is happening right now in front of your eyes. And Washington stalled because it's broke and broken. I mean, it's out of money, and you're not able to get this together. So while there's a stall here, you see the states are moving forward. It's on kind of one or two models.
Who's your favorite Democratic governor?
There are a lot of good folks, and I haven't met somebody that I thought had a bad heart in the system, whether when I was here or at the state level. People care. They really do care. Just they got a different idea. Paul Wellstone and I did the first human trafficking bill together, and Paul, you may remember, was a dedicated liberal. I love the guy. Died in a tragic plane crash, and he and I did this human trafficking model, and we had a bill that had both Gloria Steinem and Chuck Colson behind it.
That's a rare opportunity.
Yeah, so when people would see us coming, they say, I'm for it, because if you can get those two to agree, and you two can agree, I'm for it. And I think really, at the end of the day, that's what you got to start figuring out is those sort of models where each side cuts off 30% of what they're after, but you're still left with a good pocket here in the middle of things that you could actually do.
Which is hard, though, right? I mean, one of the things in Washington right now where things keep on getting stalled is because you have people that don't want to compromise. Compromise has kind of become an ugly word.
But that's not what I described is not a compromise. That's Paul Wellstone saying, there's 30% of the stuff that I'd really like to do that you can't agree with. You're correct. And him saying to me, there's 30% of your stuff that you'd like to do that I can't agree with. That's correct. Now, what about this block that's left? I'm fine with it. He's fine with this. Is that really compromise, or is that just really getting to know one another enough and some trust involved to try to figure out there's a zone here that we could actually do something with? And that's what I think is really, really missing. You need people working those relationships and being willing to say, okay, I don't have to have all of this, but we got to get something.
So is there anything that you think is going to get accomplished out of this meeting that's happening this weekend?
There'll be some good discussion that'll take place. There'll be some people, I think people undervalue relationships. The fact that you get people together and you're talking is actually a very good thing. Because at the end of the day, you got to have some sort of trust level build up that you can figure out how do we move the ball forward.
Talk a little bit, I was looking at your Twitter feed. Big Kansas sports fan.
Well, we are the state of basketball. We have 3 teams that are in and out of the top 25. My big hope is that I've got 2 Kansas teams playing for the championship in the NCAA, and then I'm worried about what I'm going to bet myself in that, because your governor's betting.
Yeah, I was going to say, what do you?
Yeah, I got, barbecue is in there, and I'm not trying to think, maybe steaks, and we'll see what we come up with, but that's been a great time.
It's been fun. I also saw you had an Olympian, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever met her? Or you?
Haven't, but I'm looking forward to, because what she was in was one of those you're going.
The skeleton races.
Yeah, going down this thing, 70 miles an hour? I don't know how fast they are, and I'm just going, wow, I'm impressed.
No fear.
Yeah, really.
We'll talk a little bit about, in terms of kind of Kansas, what you're thinking of, looking at your next election. I mean, what are you going to try to point to? You talked about your five things that you were thinking of that you ran on the first time. Do you think you're going to be able to look at those metrics and say, I said I was going to run on this, and this is what I got accomplished?
Yes, we are. And the metrics look good. We've got a couple that have stayed static and 3 that have improved substantially. And what I want to do is to see the metrics continue to improve. But last time around, we had such a huge fiscal problem. So I ran on, we got to fix our fiscal house. Well, we have. We ended last year with 12.5% ending balance. We had a record revenue year for the state of Kansas last fiscal year.
$700 million, I think?
Yeah, 12.5% ending balance, which is a great ending balance. And we had a record revenue year, and we got our employment. We got to continue to work on jobs. But I really think the key areas that states are going to have to focus on is just what are we doing to help people out of poverty and mental health? I'm doubling back to what I was talking to you earlier. But as I'm around the state a lot, you're looking at these things and just saying, these systems have not worked.
Is there anything at the federal level? Are you trying to work with any of your senators or your members to try to push things that way?
Yeah, and I've been talking with members of Congress. I've been talking, I was just at a think tank here in town talking with people about how would you deal with this? Because in our party, you got a lot of models on economic growth. Mm-hmm. How would you cause growth? Well, you got a ton of experts on it, and we brought Art Laffer into Kansas, and some people agree or disagree with Art, but he's got an opinion and he's got a track record. Well, what about on mental health, and what about on poverty? You know, and you just have less models of how would you change this? But yet it's just such a crying area.
What about in terms of, I mean, this isn't necessarily poverty, but you talk about the minimum wage is something that we are discussing a lot right now in terms of Obama trying to raise it. You saw Gap, I think a couple days ago, decided to raise it voluntarily themselves. Do you think it needs to be raised? Because you talk about poverty, I mean, and low-wage workers.
I'm not going to jump into that one for here of a debate. What I do think we've got to do is we've got to get people in a better position to earn more money. One of the best policy innovations we've done, and Brookings Institute recognized this as one of the top 10 in the country, was state of Kansas stepped up and said, if you will take technical education while you're in high school, the state will pay for 100% of it. And school district, if people get an industry-recognized certification like American Welders Association, IT certification, we'll give the school district a $1,000 bounty for each one of those you get, high school students. 70% enrollment increase. We had a national letter of intent signing day yesterday to sign up for technical school.
Great.
And this changed people's lives. Now I can make more than a minimum wage because I've got a CNA or I've got a welding certification. And I can help partially work my way through college. That's the sort of thing where you are changing real skills in an employable market area. That is the sort of thing I think we ought to be focusing on a lot more, because we've got to up our game ability, and you do that by getting people skills.
So less of a focus on what the baseline is, but more of a focus on trying to improve trajectory.
Yes, absolutely. Give people a chance, and with this one, I've been really pleased about this. You ought to have seen the kids and the parents there yesterday. They were excited about this chance. I'm going into diesel mechanics, and you got all these industry people around too going, wow, we need people that can do heating and plumbing. Has anybody hired a plumber recently? You know, the electrician. You need people that can do this. And I don't want to make light of college, because college is important. I've got advanced degree. You know, this is a key thing, but we need people that can do these things too.
Talk a little bit about, I want to end on this because I did not know this about you, that you were the Ag Secretary, and the Farm Bill just passed. What kind of an impact? I imagine Kansas, this is huge. Were you glad that it got done? Do you feel, I mean, there were obviously deals that were cut in that package that was less, be able to kind of get the chafe on either side.
Yeah, I was glad it got done, and particularly the issue of crop insurance. That's the area really that a lot of Kansas agriculture is more focused on than anything. But the Ag Bill anymore is a lot more about kind of support programs more broadly than it is about agriculture issues. But overall, I'm glad it's moving forward. The agriculture industry is doing very well in the United States. It and energy are two of our bedrock pieces of the Kansas economy, and they overall are doing well. We're producing a lot more energy, and that's oil, it's natural gas, it's wind energy, and a lot more agricultural products too. And these are backbone industries for the United States, and we are good at it.
I grew up on a farm.
Yeah, well, the technology in it. This is a quick side bit.
Yeah.
I'm flying back from a tornado, which happens once in a while, not often. And I'm looking down the field, and there's this perfect-looking kind of snake-going lines in the field. And it was a guy had sprayed his field with a GPS system and makes these perfect lines going down, and just applying the exact right amount of a chemical. The technology in these fields now, and what they do with the seed and the application is really phenomenal to see. I drove a tractor around a parking lot and around cars without touching the steering wheel. It just kind of, oh, okay. This is a big tractor, and it could cause a lot of damage, but the technology is really a beautiful piece of it.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much. It was great to have you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.